Hello again, and welcome back to The Night Reader. If you're new here, I'm glad you've joined us tonight. This is where we gather, dim our lights, and dive into stories that will make you question what you know about the world, and perhaps make you look over your shoulder once or twice. If you haven't already, remember to like, subscribe, and let me know in the comments where you're listening from tonight. It's always a pleasure to know how far our Night Reader family reaches. The world is smaller than we think, but the night? Well, the night is endless. Now let's begin. I moved to Ashbrook in the fall, after my life in the city collapsed. Divorce, a layoff, and a health scare had me on the brink, and I needed peace. Real peace. So I packed what I could fit into my truck, sold the rest, and bought a small farm property I found online. It was cheap, too cheap. But at that point, I wasn't asking questions. I just needed space to breathe. The town of Ashbrook was nothing more than a few scattered houses, a gas station that closed by dusk, and an old diner where the townsfolk sat in silence. No stoplights, no grocery stores, just quiet. And I liked that. It was exactly what I needed. The farmhouse I bought sat on the edge of an open field, surrounded by nothing but tall grass and distant hills. A gravel road led to the property, and the mailbox had been rusted shut when I arrived. I hadn't expected any mail, so that didn't bother me. But 3 weeks into my new life, it came. It was a cold October morning, the kind where the sun barely burns off the mist. I opened the front door to find a single white envelope resting on my porch. There was no postage stamp, no address, just a name written in neat, flowing cursive. Mr. Daniel K. Morley. That wasn't my name. I nearly tossed it, but something about the handwriting stopped me. It wasn't like anything I'd ever seen before. It was old-fashioned, elegant, like something out of an old ledger or a religious text. Intrigued, I slipped the envelope into my jacket pocket and forgot about it for the rest of the day. That night, as I sat by the fireplace, whiskey in hand, I decided to open the letter. Maybe it was just a mistake, some sort of clerical error. But when I pulled it out and unfolded the crisp paper inside, I froze. The letter contained only a single sentence. The congregation waits for the bell. It must ring again before the 13th night. You know where the rope lies buried. Do not delay. Midnight approaches. I stared at the letter, reading it again and again, trying to make sense of it. The words didn't mean anything to me. I didn't know any Daniel K. Morley, and I certainly had no idea what this bell was about. But as I looked at the letter, a strange unease began to settle over me. It wasn't fear, not exactly. It was more like recognition. A feeling that these words, the bell, the 13th night, the congregation, were familiar in some way. But why? Why did they seem so real to me, even though I had never heard of any of it? I folded the letter and shoved it into a drawer, hoping it would fade from my mind. But as I tried to sleep that night, I couldn't shake the words. And the noises, the sounds outside my window were soft, rhythmic tapping, almost like something or someone was waiting out there. I convinced myself it was just the wind, but I couldn't ignore the uneasy feeling gnawing at me. The next morning, I opened the drawer to find the letter again. I took a deep breath and tucked it into my jacket pocket. It was the kind of thing you try to forget, but it clings to you anyway. That afternoon, I went into town. The gas station was closed, of course, and the diner had just a few patrons. I couldn't shake the feeling that the town knew something, that the people were hiding something. But they wouldn't tell me. They kept their eyes on their coffee cups, their conversations never straying far from the weather. Later that evening, when I returned to the farmhouse, I found it. The second letter. This time, it was in my mailbox, the one I hadn't bothered to fix. No rust, no damage. Just a clean white envelope, sitting there like it had been placed with intention. Again, it was addressed to Mr. Daniel K. Morley. This one was shorter. No cryptic message. Just 2 sentences. They grow impatient. The ground knows what you forgot. Listen for the weeping in the field. I stood frozen for a moment, staring at the envelope. The same cold dread crept back into me, that same feeling of recognition, like I had always known what these letters meant, even though I couldn't remember why. That night, I sat at the window, watching the field. The wind had picked up and the tall grass swayed in waves, but there was something more this time, something that unsettled me in a way I couldn't explain. And then I heard it. A sound, soft, distant, and faint, like crying. Not the cry of a child. It was deep, sorrowful, hollow. I tried to convince myself it was the wind, the trees, but it wasn't. It was something else, something alive, something in the field. I rushed to the window and peered out, but all I could see was the moonlight bathing the grass. There was no sign of anything unusual. Still, the sound continued, rising from the earth itself. And then, as if the world itself held its breath, I saw her, a figure standing alone in the field. It was a woman, I think. She wore a black dress, her head bowed, her arms hanging limply at her sides. She stood unmoving, even as the wind tore through the grass. I don't know how long I watched her. I blinked, and when I opened my eyes, she was gone. I don't know what to make of it. I've searched the field for signs of her, but there's nothing there. Just the tall grass. No footprints. Nothing. Except for a strange depression in the earth. A small, sunken area that looks like something heavy had been resting there for a long time. I don't know what it means, but I can't ignore it anymore. And the letters keep coming. The air grew colder as I stood, frozen in the center of the field, rope still clenched tightly in my hand. The sound of the bell, distant but unmistakable, echoed through my chest, reverberating against my ribs like a second heartbeat. I could feel it deep within me, a thudding rhythm that felt both foreign and familiar, like I was connected to it in a way I couldn't understand. The wind had stopped. The once whispering grass now stood still, as though the world itself had fallen silent in anticipation. In the distance, the figures remained, still, unmoving, just beyond the reach of the moonlight. But the weight of their presence pressed in on me, making the air thick and oppressive. The longer I stood there, the more I felt their eyes on me, though I couldn't see their faces, just the vague shape of their forms. I glanced down at the rope. It was no longer just an object I had pulled from the earth. It felt like something else now. Something alive. There was a sense of purpose to it, a pull in my hand, as though it was directing me, guiding me towards something I couldn't name. I wanted to throw it away, to run, but the more I tried to ignore it, the stronger the pull became. The bell rang again. The sound grew louder, closer, until it was no longer distant, but right beside me, filling my ears. It felt like the bell was inside me, echoing through my very bones. I wanted to scream, but no sound escaped my throat. I was paralyzed, caught between the pull of the rope and the deafening toll of the bell. The world around me felt like it was slipping away, unraveling at the edges, as if the very fabric of reality was thinning. The figures in the field moved then. They didn't walk, not like people, but jerked forward in unison, as though controlled by some unseen force. Their movements were mechanical, stiff and unnatural, their limbs swinging in strange angles that no human body should be capable of. I could hear the faint rustle of their burlap coverings, but there was no sound from them otherwise. No whispers, no voices. And then a voice, low and hoarse, came from behind me. Daniel. It was a voice I knew, though I couldn't place it. Familiar, yet distant, like a memory buried deep in my mind. My heart pounded in my chest, my breath quick and shallow, as I turned slowly, the rope still in my hands. The figure that stood behind me was taller than the others. Its form was cloaked in a torn, weathered burlap sack, but unlike the others, this one's skin was visible beneath the fabric. Pale, stretched tight over bone and mottled with dark patches of decay. The face was obscured just like the others, but the hollow eyes, those black, gaping voids, were unmistakable. It raised a hand, and in its grasp, I saw something that froze me to the core, a rope, thick and coiled, much like the one I had just unearthed. It held the rope out, as if offering it to me. "You have taken what was never yours," it said, its voice a rasp like wind through dry branches. "Now you must return it." I stumbled back, my heart racing, as the field around me seemed to close in. The wind had picked up again, but it wasn't a natural gust. It was like the wind was alive, howling through the Talaninan Seeker, pushing against me, urging me forward. The congregation, those dark, twisted figures, moved in closer, their stiff bodies jerking in rhythm, as though they were bound to some ancient, terrible choreography. "I don't understand," I whispered, my voice trembling. "What is this? What do you want from me?" The figure with the rope stepped closer, its hollow eyes fixed on me. "The bell tolls, Daniel. The bell tolls for you, for all who forget." Its words made no sense, yet I could feel them sinking deep into me, like they were dredging up something buried long ago. My hands shook, my breath caught in my throat, but I couldn't look away from the figure. There was something about it, something in its presence. It felt like a part of me was tied to it, like I had known it before in another life or in another time. The bell tolled again, loud and insistent. The sound echoed in my chest like a warning, a death knell, its deep clangs reaching down into the very earth beneath me. And then the ground began to shift. I felt it first beneath my feet, the subtle vibration of something moving deep within the earth. It wasn't like an earthquake, but something heavier, something older. The air grew thick, and the wind howled, spinning in tight circles around me. The earth groaned like it was waking up, as if it had been asleep for centuries and was now stretching its limbs, ready to rise. The figures in the field began to move faster, jerking forward with more speed and urgency, closing the distance between us. The ropes in their hands began to twist and undulate like snakes seeking their prey. The bell tolled again, and the earth trembled beneath me. The sound wasn't just in the air anymore, it was inside me, shaking my very bones, pushing me toward the congregation. A voice, not from the figure, but from somewhere beneath the ground, whispered my name. "Daniel." I fell to my knees, the rope slipping from my grasp. My breath came in gasps, my mind reeling. It felt like the earth was trying to swallow me whole, pulling me into the darkness that lay beneath. The bell, the voices, the figures. They were all connected. Connected to me. Connected to something I couldn't remember. Something I had left behind. And then I heard it. The last toll of the bell. It was louder than the others, deafening in its finality. And with that last toll, the ground gave a violent heave. The earth cracked open, and from the depths, something began to rise. I looked up in time to see the shadow of the bell's tower, its outline emerging from the earth itself, its jagged form rising through the soil. The tower was broken, its steeple twisted and warped, but it was unmistakable. The bell was ringing. The bell was calling. And whatever was buried beneath it, whatever ancient thing had been locked away for so long, was waking. The congregation moved closer. They surrounded me, their hollow eyes staring down at me as the bell continued to toll, each ring vibrating through my chest like it was tearing me apart. I didn't know what I had done. I didn't know why the bell had chosen me, but I knew, without a doubt, that I was part of something much larger now, something that couldn't be undone. And as the bell tolled one final time, I realized that I was no longer alone. I was part of the congregation, and the night was only just beginning. The ground beneath me rumbled again, deeper this time, and the dark forms surrounding me, the congregation, shifted like a storm of shadow and fabric. I could hear their breaths now, shallow and ragged, as if they were all waiting for something. My heart pounded in my chest, and I could taste the cold air in my lungs. I wanted to run, to escape, but the earth beneath my feet seemed to be holding me there, anchoring me to the spot. The bell's sound continued, louder now, a deafening clamor that shook the very air around us. It wasn't just an ordinary bell. No, it felt ancient, its tones steeped in sorrow and foreboding, as if it had been calling for centuries, calling for someone, calling for me. I turned my head back to the figures standing around me. Their movements had become more fluid, more human, though still strange, jerky, unnatural. One of them, a man cloaked in tattered burlap, stepped closer, his face hidden beneath the fabric. But his presence felt sharp, like a knife cutting through the thick air. He was different from the others. He was watching me, his hollow eyes fixed on mine. "You've heard the bell," he whispered, his voice a rasp like dry leaves scraping against stone. "You've felt the pull. There is no turning back now." I swallowed hard, my mind struggling to catch up with the overwhelming sense of dread that had settled over me. What did he mean by no turning back? I tried to speak, but my throat was dry, constricted. I couldn't make a sound, only stare at the figure, my hands trembling at my sides. "You're one of us now," the figure continued, its voice deepening, echoing around me. "The bell chose you. It always chooses. You are here because you have forgotten something important, something vital. And now you will remember." His words sliced through my mind, and for a moment, a vague recollection stirred within me. It was like a dream, a fragmented memory from another life, a life I couldn't quite reach. A voice, soft and tender, whispered in the back of my mind, "You must forget, Daniel. You must forget the bell. You must forget them." The thought was gone before I could grasp it, as though it had been pulled from my mind the moment I tried to hold on to it. But the sense of loss, the emptiness it left behind, was undeniable. The bell, the figures, this place, everything was connected. But to what? And why was I being pulled into it? The figure in front of me stepped closer, his burlap sack torn just enough to reveal a patch of skin, pale and stretched, tight, over bone. It looked almost inhuman, like something that had been dead for a long time and had somehow come back to life. "You will remember," the figure said again, "and when you do, you will understand why you're here." Before I could respond or even move, a sound tore through the air. It wasn't the bell this time, it was a scream. A sharp, guttural sound that sliced through the night, echoing across the field like the wail of something ancient and wrong. The figure beside me turned toward the noise, his face twitching beneath the sack as if something inside him had stirred. "It begins," he muttered, his voice low and heavy. And then, just as suddenly as it had started, the scream was cut off. The field fell back into its unsettling silence, and I found myself standing in the middle of it, utterly alone, except for the congregation. Their forms remained motionless, but there was something in the air now, something that felt like the calm before a storm. I glanced around, desperately searching for any sign of escape, but there was nothing. No road, no fence, no sign of the farmhouse or the truck I had driven in on. The field stretched on endlessly, swallowed by shadows. The wind had picked up again, rustling the tall grass, but it was no longer a comforting sound. Now, it felt like the wind itself was alive, whispering secrets to the congregation, beckoning them forward. And that's when I saw it. In the distance, just past the edge of the field, something was moving. It was subtle at first, barely noticeable, but then it became clear. A figure, tall and shrouded in darkness, was walking slowly toward us. It was as if it were emerging from the earth itself, moving through the tall grass with a kind of eerie grace. The figure reached the center of the field, and I felt my heart skip a beat. It was wearing a long cloak, the fabric dark and tattered, the hood pulled up over its head, but what caught my attention most were the eyes, deep, black, endless. They seemed to glow with an inner light, as if something otherworldly lived within them. The congregation seemed to sense the presence of the figure too. One by one, they began to move, their bodies jerking into motion as they turned to face the newcomer. The air around us felt charged, alive with an energy I couldn't explain. And the bell, still ringing, still tolling, seemed to grow louder, as if it was calling to the figure, welcoming it home. The figure stopped, its gaze falling on me. The eyes, dark and hollow, studied me for what felt like an eternity. My throat tightened again, and I could feel my legs trembling beneath me. It wasn't until the figure stepped forward that I realized how close it had gotten. It moved with such fluidity, such purpose, that it almost seemed to glide across the ground, leaving no trace of its passage behind. And then it spoke. "Daniel," it said, its voice soft but heavy, like the weight of 1,000 years pressing down on me. "The time has come. You've been chosen." The words hit me like a blow. Chosen? By whom? For what? My mind spun with questions, but none of them made sense. My lips parted, but still, I couldn't find the words to speak. The figure raised a hand, and in its grip, I saw something gleaming. A small, delicate bell, its surface polished and smooth. The bell was not like the one that had been tolling, but it radiated a similar energy, an aura of ancient power that seemed to call out to me. "This bell," the figure continued, "is the key. You have carried it with you all along, Daniel, though you didn't know it. But now, you must remember. You must ring it." The wind picked up again, howling through the field, but all I could focus on was the bell in the figure's hand. It seemed to hum with energy, vibrating with something deeper than sound, deeper than anything I had ever felt before. The bell, the key. I felt it then, the pull of the bell, tugging at me, calling me toward it. The figure held it out to me, and though every instinct in me screamed to run, to turn away, to leave, something else, something darker, something that had been buried deep inside of me, reached out and took the bell from its hand. The moment my fingers wrapped around it, everything changed. The sky grew darker, the wind howled louder, the earth trembled beneath us, and somewhere, far off in the distance, a low, mournful toll sounded, rising from the depths of the earth. It wasn't the bell, it was the earth itself, and it was waking up. The moment I gripped the bell, everything shifted. The air thickened. The world around me seemed to hold its breath, and for the briefest moment, I thought I might suffocate from the weight of it all. The sound, the ringing. It wasn't just in my ears anymore. It reverberated deep inside me like the pulse of some ancient forgotten creature stirring to life. The congregation didn't move. They didn't speak, but I felt their eyes on me, their presence heavy, watching, waiting, as if this moment, this choice, had been foretold long ago, and now that it had come to pass, nothing would ever be the same. I held the bell tightly in my hand, and though it was small, almost delicate. The weight of it felt like 1,000 years of history pressing down on my arm. I looked at the figure before me, its black eyes still watching, its voice silent but commanding. "You've taken it now," the figure said in a voice that felt like it came from within my mind rather than my ears. "The bell has chosen you, Daniel K. Morley. It will lead you to the truth, but it will also demand something in return." The wind howled around us again, its force stronger now, as if the earth itself were protesting. I looked down at the bell, its surface reflecting the faint light of the moon, and I could feel it. A tremor in the earth, a shudder, as if something beneath the soil was waking up. I didn't know what to do next. I didn't even know what this meant, what I had just set into motion. The figure stepped closer, its feet barely touching the ground, gliding over the field like a shadow in the night. "You will be tested," it continued. "The bell will guide you, but it will not be kind. It will show you things, Daniel, things you have forgotten, things you never wanted to remember. You will see the truth of the land, the truth of the church in the field, the truth of the one who walked before you." I felt a chill run down my spine, and I could see it. Flashes of images, like scenes from a nightmare that wouldn't stay still long enough for me to grasp. A face in the dark, a building, crumbling and forgotten, its steeple crooked, figures walking, dressed in the same burlap as the congregation, and in the center of it all, the bell. The figure's hand reached out, not to touch me, but to point toward the field. "It is here, Daniel," it said. "The truth is buried in the earth, but you will need to search for it. It will not be easy. It will not be painless." A sharp pain shot through my chest, and I gasped, clutching the bell tighter. My vision blurred, my thoughts scrambled. Was I hallucinating? Was this some sick trick of the mind? The earth rumbled again, and this time I felt it through my very bones. It wasn't the wind or the bell. It was something else, something older. I looked up, and I saw it. A shape, darker than the night, rising from the ground itself. It was a tower, or what used to be a tower, though now it was little more than a ruin. The edges of the structure seemed to bleed into the soil, its walls crumbling and shifting like sand. But what was most unnerving was the bell that hung at the top. Huge, ancient, and cracked. Its surface covered in strange markings I couldn't begin to decipher. The figure beside me spoke again, its voice low, almost a whisper in the wind. "The bell has summoned the tower, and the tower calls to the earth. The tower, the bell, the truth." I could feel it all coming together, pulling me in, dragging me toward that dark monument at the edge of the field. But the fear that had settled in my chest like a cold weight, kept me rooted to the spot. "You are close, Daniel," the figure said, its voice becoming more insistent. "Closer than you realize. But you are not alone in this search. Others have come before you, and others will come after. The bell calls them all." The earth trembled once more, and the bell I was holding seemed to grow heavier, its vibrations shifting in tune with the rumblings beneath the ground. The wind grew colder, more biting, and I realized I was standing in the center of a graveyard. Not just any graveyard, though. A graveyard of forgotten things, forgotten souls, forgotten sins. Around me, scattered across the field, I saw them. The shadows that had once been figures, standing still and silent, were now slowly moving, their eyes locked on me. They didn't walk like humans. They didn't walk at all. They floated, drifting, gliding over the field, their forms shifting in and out of focus. They were tethered to the earth in ways I couldn't understand, as though they were trapped between worlds, caught in the space between the living and the dead. The figures didn't speak. They didn't need to. Their presence was enough. One of them, the one closest to me, stepped forward, its form coalescing in the moonlight. Its face was covered in tattered burlap, its body cloaked in dark, worn fabric. But it was not the burlap that caught my attention. It was the rope, thick, knotted, and frayed, that hung from its outstretched hand. The rope was connected to the bell. Somehow, I knew that. "The bell must ring again," the figure said, its voice soft and distant. "The earth must know it has been heard. The bell must toll for those who have come before you, and for those who will follow." I didn't know what that meant. I didn't know what any of this meant. But I did know one thing. The bell was calling me. It was pulling me toward something, toward that ruined tower, toward the truth buried beneath the earth, and toward a destiny I didn't understand. And the worst part? I couldn't ignore it. I couldn't turn away. "Ring it," the figure whispered. "Ring it, Daniel K. Morley, and see what you have unleashed." I looked down at the bell, its delicate surface gleaming in the moonlight. I felt the pull again, that irresistible force tugging at my chest, my very soul. The bell had chosen me, and now it was time to answer its call. The bell in my hands felt impossibly heavy now, as though the weight of all that had come before me, everything it had witnessed, everything it had summoned, was pressing down, begging to be released. The rope that had once been tied to the bell, now in the hands of the figure, seemed to pulse with energy, like a living thing, eager to complete some ancient, forgotten ritual. I glanced around at the silent, watching figures. The air was colder now, sharper. My breath fogged in front of me, swirling like smoke as it left my lips. The moon had vanished behind a thick layer of clouds, plunging the field into a darkness so complete I could no longer see beyond my outstretched arm. It was as though the land itself had swallowed the light, pulling me into its depths. "Ring it," the voice of the figure repeated. "It is time." My hand trembled as I raised the bell, the heavy weight of it almost too much to bear. I hesitated for only a moment, my mind racing, my heart pounding in my chest. I didn't want to. Every part of me screamed to turn back, to drop the bell and run back to the house, to forget this whole nightmare. But deep down I knew that wasn't an option anymore. The bell's call had already ensnared me, and as I lifted it to the air, I heard something. A faint rustling, as if something beneath the ground was stirring, waking up from an eternal slumber. The earth beneath my feet seemed to groan in response, like a beast shifting in its cave. A deep, reverberating sound filled the air, a low hum like a distant drone of thunder, but without the storm. A sound that settled deep in my chest, in my very bones. It was the bell, I realized. It was calling to something, or perhaps to someone, and it was asking me to be its messenger. "You have no choice," the figure said, its voice now cold and final. "The bell calls to those who are meant to answer, and now it calls to you." The bell swung through the air with a deep, aching resonance, and then I rang it. The sound was unlike anything I had ever heard. It was as though the bell itself tore through the fabric of the night, splitting the air with its ancient toll. The noise rattled the earth, shaking it from the deepest roots, and I felt the land beneath me tremble in response. It wasn't the sound of a normal bell. It was the sound of a warning, a call to the past, a call to the lost. For a moment, there was nothing but silence, a terrible, suffocating silence that pressed in on all sides, drowning out everything else. I stood frozen, my heart pounding in my chest, unsure of what had just happened. Then, as if in answer to the bell's toll, the earth beneath my feet gave a sharp, painful lurch. The ground cracked wide open in front of me, a jagged fissure splitting the field like a wound opening across the earth's skin. A dark, shifting void yawned before me, and from it came a cold, suffocating draft. The figures around me did not move. They remained statuesque, like ghosts from another time. But the air had changed. It was thicker now, filled with a weight that pressed against my lungs, and beneath it, I could hear it, the faintest whispering sound, like the soft rustling of old pages, the rustling of memories long forgotten. "It's begun," the figure beside me whispered. "The bell has answered the call. The altar will be revealed. The earth will show you what you have been searching for." I turned toward the chasm in the earth, now wider, its edges splitting like the jagged teeth of some ancient beast. And from it, I saw it, the faintest gleam of something in the darkness, something metallic. A glint that caught the edge of the moonlight. A bell. A much larger bell, lying buried in the ground, its shape distorted by years of neglect and rot. But it was unmistakably there, just beneath the surface, its presence beckoning. I stepped toward the opening. The earth was unstable now, its tremors shaking the very ground beneath me. But something inside of me, something deep, primal, pushed me forward. The bell had called, and now I had to answer. With each step, I felt the presence of something old, something forgotten, watching me from the shadows. I felt it in my chest, in the pit of my stomach, an unshakable feeling that something was following me, that something had been waiting for me. I knelt beside the chasm and reached into the darkness, my fingers brushing against the cold metal of the buried bell. It was larger than I had imagined, its surface engraved with symbols I could not understand. Ancient runes, twisted together in patterns that made my head spin just to look at them. I grasped the bell, my fingers curling around the cold, tarnished metal. The moment my hand made contact with it, I felt it. Like a shock of electricity shooting up my arm, a pulse of raw energy coursing through my veins. The earth beneath me groaned again, the air thickening even further, and I heard it, the whispering. Louder now, like voices calling from deep within the earth, calling my name. "Daniel! Daniel K. Morley." The whisper turned into a chant, growing louder and more insistent. I tried to pull my hand away, but the bell was stuck. The rope that had been tied to it now snaked around my wrist, pulling me closer, tugging me into the chasm. The world around me began to spin, the ground opening up beneath me, and I could see it. The altar, a structure rising from the depths, its stones slick with the ancient dampness of the earth. The altar was old, much older than anything I had ever seen. It looked like it had been buried for centuries, hidden away from the light. But now, it was rising, emerging from the darkness in response to the bell's toll. And at its center, a figure. No, not a figure, a presence, a shape, a form too vast to comprehend, too ancient to understand. I wanted to scream, but I couldn't. My voice was swallowed by the earth, the very air thick with the weight of the bell's call. The bell had rung, and the world had answered. I didn't know how long I stood there, frozen, with the cold, rough metal of the bell pulling me deeper into the chasm. Time seemed to stretch, to bend in ways that I couldn't understand, like the moments were being pulled and twisted by the very force of the earth beneath me. The ground groaned again, and I could feel the pulse of something ancient and hungry beating beneath the soil. The bell, the chasm, the altar, everything was connected, but the connection was not of this world. It was as if I had crossed some invisible line, stepped beyond the veil that separated the living from the forgotten, the known from the lost. And now, as the bell's heavy toll echoed through the land, I understood. This was no accident. I wasn't meant to be here. I wasn't meant to find this place. But now that I had, I was a part of something much bigger than myself. A loud crack of thunder split the air above me, though there was no storm. The wind whipped around me, sharp and biting, and the earth below seemed to breathe, inhaling with the ground, exhaling with the air. The whispers grew louder, Not words, but sounds, scraping against my mind like nails across a chalkboard. The feeling of being watched, of being drawn into something, grew unbearable. Then the pull of the rope around my wrist tightened, not just a tug, but a firm yank, forcing me forward. The bell in my hand rang once more, softly, but with a deep, mournful resonance that filled the entire chasm. The earth responded, rumbling beneath me, and I stumbled, my feet slipping on the loose dirt. I tried to pull my hand away from the bell, but it wouldn't release me. It was as though I had become one with it. As though I was no longer holding the bell, but that the bell was holding me, its power running through me like a current, its pull unbreakable. I looked up. Before me, the altar loomed, ancient and blackened, standing in the center of the chasm like some forsaken temple. It was covered in the same twisted symbols that adorned the bell, symbols that seemed to writhe and shift in the dim light, as if they were alive. The stones that made up the altar were slick with dark, oily stains, the remnants of something long buried, and there, at the center of it all, I saw it, a figure, a silhouette against the altar, rising from the earth like a ghostly shadow. It was enormous, towering over me, a presence that seemed to fill the very space around me. I couldn't see its face, if it had one, only the outline of its form, dark and undefined. It was more than just a shape. It was an ancient force, a being of something otherworldly. The whispers grew louder, almost deafening now. It was as if the land itself was speaking, its words seeping into my very soul. You have awakened it. The voice was not human, not even close. It was a sound older than language, a vibration that spoke directly to the deepest parts of my being. The bell has called. The offering must be made. The figure raised one arm, a dark, skeletal appendage. It seemed to stretch impossibly long, reaching toward me. The rope, still wound around my wrist, tightened even more. My arm felt like it was being pulled apart by the pressure. My skin burned with a cold fire, the sensation crawling up my arm like frostbite, but deeper. You must give it what it desires, the voice continued, echoing in my mind, in the very air around me. The earth is hungry. The bell has called, and you must answer. I didn't understand. I wanted to scream, to run, to break free from whatever nightmare this was, but I couldn't. My body felt like it was no longer mine. My thoughts, my will were slipping away, swallowed by the darkness that surrounded me. The figure's arm came closer, its fingers curling like talons, stretching toward me. And then I understood. It wasn't just the bell that had called to me. It was this ancient being, this thing that had been buried beneath the earth for so long, had reached out to me. It had chosen me, drawn me here through some force I couldn't comprehend. And now, it wanted something in return. It wanted an offering. I tried to scream again, but no sound came from my throat. The figure's presence was overwhelming, suffocating. It was as if my very soul was being suffused with its darkness. And then, the earth shook, not like before, when the ground had merely trembled beneath my feet. This was different. This was the earth splitting apart, the soil cracking open like a mouth, ready to swallow me whole. It is time, the voice said again, now in unison with the terrible rumblings of the earth. The offering must be made before the bell tolls for the last time. Only then will you understand. Only then will you know the truth. The ground beneath me gave way. I fell. I didn't have time to scream. I didn't have time for anything but the suffocating darkness, the pressure building around me, pushing me deeper into the earth. The bell was still in my hand, its weight dragging me down, its toll ringing in my ears. And with every passing second, the whispers grew louder, more insistent, until they were the only sound left in my mind. "The truth lies below," the voice whispered. "You are the offering. You always were." And then, just as the darkness threatened to consume me, I hit the ground. The fall had felt like an eternity, but it was nothing compared to the silence that followed. I lay there in the cold, dark earth, my chest heaving, my heart pounding in my ears. I could feel the bell still clutched in my hand, its presence somehow grounding me, even as the world around me shifted and twisted in unnatural ways. I looked around, trying to make sense of my surroundings, but there was nothing. Nothing but the deep, oppressive blackness of the earth surrounding me. Then I heard it, a sound, a low, guttural groan. It came from the earth itself, from beneath me, and then the earth began to move. It was slow at first, just a shift in the soil. But it quickly became more violent, like something huge was pushing its way up from deep below, something ancient, something that had been waiting for me. The altar, the bell, the offering. I was no longer sure where I was, or when, but I knew one thing. I had crossed a line, and whatever came next, it would not be the same. The earth trembled beneath me, sending vibrations through my spine as the sound of grinding, scraping stone echoed in the suffocating darkness. I could feel the ground shift around me, rising and falling in waves, as though something beneath the earth had awakened and was now clawing its way upward. My chest tightened, my breath coming in shallow, panicked gasps. The bell still hung from my grasp, its weight a steady, unyielding pressure in my hand, as if it were tethering me to something beyond the present moment, beyond anything I could understand. It seemed to vibrate with an unnatural energy, as though it was attuned to the pulse of the earth itself, reacting to whatever force was stirring beneath. And then the ground broke open. It wasn't a crack or a fissure like before. This was more like an eruption. The soil parted, splitting apart as though some enormous buried thing had thrust itself up from the depths, forcing its way through the earth. A foul, cloying smell filled the air. Something damp, musty, like rotting leaves and mold, and beneath it, something older, still. Something I couldn't name, couldn't place. I stumbled back, heart racing, but there was no escaping it. The earth had opened, and what had been buried for eons was now rising to the surface. In the darkness, I could see it. The outline of something massive, something ancient, something not of this world. It was a shape, a form that seemed to shimmer in and out of focus, flickering like a flame in the wind. It was as though it couldn't decide if it was solid or ethereal, existing between dimensions. My eyes tried to focus on it, but the more I stared, the more my mind recoiled from it, unable to comprehend the enormity of what was happening. The figure grew larger, its shape slowly becoming more distinct, a towering form made of dark, crumbling stone, but also of something organic, roots twisted like tendrils, pulling themselves from the earth, reaching into the air like grasping hands. And beneath the surface, something else shifted. A groan, low and rumbling. The earth itself seemed to sigh as the creature, the thing, emerged fully from its underground prison. The ground quaked again, and this time I felt it in my bones, in the marrow of my body, a vibration that rattled every fiber of my being. The whispers were louder now. They came from everywhere, from the air, the soil, from inside my skull. A chorus of voices, distorted, broken, ancient. They weren't words anymore. They were just sounds, incomprehensible and alien, but they spoke to me in ways that bypassed understanding and went straight to the core of my existence. "It is time," the voice of the figure rumbled, though it was not a voice I could hear. It was a vibration, a pulse in the air that hummed through the earth and through my chest. I could barely breathe. I could barely think. The air was too thick, too heavy, and the darkness pressed in from every side. Then, The bell in my hand began to ring on its own. The sound was deafening. It wasn't just the clang of metal against air. It was a deep, reverberating toll that seemed to echo from the very bowels of the earth, as if the bell was calling to something below, or perhaps it was calling with the earth itself. The ringing filled me, saturated me, until I could no longer hear anything else but the sound of it. I couldn't move. My feet were frozen to the ground, my body locked in place as the bell rang louder and louder, and the ground beneath me continued to shift. And then, as if in response to the bell's toll, the creature before me stirred. It was huge, gargantuan. Like an ancient god risen from the grave, its body formed of twisted stone and living roots that pulsed with dark energy. Its eyes, if they could even be called eyes, glowed with an unnatural, sickly light, and they turned toward me. I could feel the weight of its gaze, its presence suffocating, pressing down on me, and for the first time I realized how small and insignificant I was in comparison. "You have come," the creature's voice filled my mind again, like a crushing wave of force. "The bell has called, and the offering must be made." I felt my legs give way beneath me, but I didn't fall. I was sinking, slowly, as though the very ground had turned to quicksand, pulling me down into the depths. The bell, still in my hand, began to ring again, louder, more insistent, its sound drowning out all thought, all reason. The air around me felt suffocating. The whispers were everywhere now, filling every corner of my mind, pressing in on me until I couldn't tell what was real and what was not. The figure before me loomed larger still, its form shifting and changing, now like a mountain, now like a god, its presence consuming everything in its wake. It was asking for something. It wanted the offering, and I was the offering. The ground opened beneath me further, and I fell. No, not fell. I was being pulled, dragged into the earth itself. The bell rang once more, the sound reverberating through the soil, through the rock, like it was calling out to the heavens, to the depths, to the universe itself. I tried to scream. I tried to shout, to demand answers, but there was nothing. Only the bell, ringing, calling, pulling me deeper. And then, as if in answer to the bell's call, the darkness shifted. It parted, and I was no longer surrounded by the crushing weight of the earth. I was standing before the altar again. But this was no longer the field where I had first discovered the bell. The altar had transformed. It was larger now, towering above me, covered in runes that pulsed with an eerie light. The earth around it was split open, as if something had erupted from within it, and beneath the altar, I could see what had been waiting all this time, a shape, a form, a figure rising from the depths of the altar. It was covered in shadow, its features indistinguishable, but its presence, its aura, was overwhelming, and it was waiting for me. I didn't understand what was happening. I didn't understand what this thing wanted from me, but I knew one thing. The bell had called, and now there was no escaping it. "The offering is complete," the figure whispered, though it wasn't a sound I heard with my ears. It was a feeling that saturated the air, the ground, my very soul. The earth trembled again, and for the first time I realized the offering wasn't just a gift. It was a choice, and I had already made it. The ground beneath me rumbled, a low and deafening growl that seemed to vibrate through my bones. My legs were shaking, my mind a blur of confusion and fear, but I couldn't tear my eyes away from the figure before me. It stood there, towering over me, tall, imposing, and unfathomable. Its very presence felt like a heavy weight pressing down on me, suffocating me. And in that moment, I realized the truth. I had always been part of this. From the very beginning. The bell had called to me, not just by chance, not by accident, but by design. I was not some innocent wanderer, lost in the woods, stumbling upon an ancient ritual. Number I had been chosen. brought here by forces far beyond my understanding. Forces that had been waiting, watching, and now they were expecting me to make the final decision. The whispers intensified again, now louder, more frantic, rushing into my mind like a flood. I could hear them clearer now, their voices overlapping, a dissonant choir of sounds too old to comprehend, too ancient to grasp. The choice is yours. The voice came from everywhere, surrounding me, suffusing the air. And yet, it wasn't just one voice. It was many. Thousands, perhaps millions, each one filled with yearning, hunger, longing. The words themselves were a command, but there was an edge of something more primal, something dark and relentless beneath them. I glanced around me, trying to make sense of what was happening. The altar, the runes, the darkness surrounding me, it was all part of some larger design, a pattern that was impossible to see from where I stood, but that seemed to stretch infinitely before me, stretching back through time, stretching into places I could never imagine. But the truth was undeniable. The offering must be made. My heart pounded in my chest, each beat louder than the last. I tried to move, to tear my eyes away from the creature, from the altar, from the bell, but I couldn't. It was as if the very air was pressing against me, binding me in place. The figure's glowing eyes fixed on me, its presence bending the very fabric of the world around us. The air felt thick, suffocating. The earth groaned beneath us, as if the ground itself was alive, waiting for my decision. And then I felt it. The pull. It started as a whisper in my mind, subtle at first, like a breath against my ear. But soon it grew, becoming more insistent. It wasn't just a feeling anymore. It was a force, a compulsion that coursed through me, tugging at the very core of my being, urging me toward the altar. The bell that had called me here, seemed to resonate with this force, its sound ringing out once more, filling my ears, echoing through the very air around me. The toll was different now. There was no longer a mournful tone. Now it was a beckoning sound, a summons pulling me closer to the altar, to the heart of this ancient ritual. I wanted to resist. I wanted to run, to break free of the invisible chains that held me, to escape whatever this was. But I couldn't. My feet felt rooted to the ground, my body stiff, unmoving. It was as if the earth itself was holding me in place, unwilling to let me go. "It's too late," the voice whispered in my mind, gentle yet unmistakably clear. "You have already made the choice." I didn't understand. How had I made a choice? I hadn't chosen anything. Hadn't I been dragged here against my will? Wasn't I just an unwilling participant in a twisted game, drawn into this nightmare by forces beyond my control? But the whispers only grew louder, more insistent. The bell has chosen. The earth has chosen. And you are the offering. The realization hit me like a slap to the face. I was the offering. The bell, the altar, the earth. All of it had led to this moment. All of it had been waiting for me to understand. I wasn't just a victim in this twisted game. I was the final piece, the key, the one who had been chosen to complete the ritual. And the offering was me. The ground shook again, more violently this time. The creature's form shifted and distorted, as if it was no longer bound by the laws of the physical world. Its roots extended further, crawling up the altar, intertwining with the very air around me. Its glowing eyes fixed on mine, and I could feel its hunger, its desire to consume, to claim, to take. "It is time," the voice of the creature whispered, low and ancient. "Time to give the offering." I closed my eyes, but the image of the creature burned into my mind, the darkness, the endless void of hunger and need that surrounded me. There was no escape, no way out. The ground, the altar, the bell, everything had conspired to bring me here, to make me part of this. The bell tolled again, and the sound seemed to split the air itself, ringing louder and louder until it felt as though the very earth was trembling beneath its weight. And then, just as suddenly, everything fell silent. The whispers ceased. The earth stopped shaking. The oppressive weight in the air lifted, if only for a moment. The silence was unbearable. I couldn't breathe. My chest was tight, my heart pounding erratically in my chest. My legs felt weak, my knees buckling as I collapsed to the ground. The bell, still clutched in my hand, felt heavier than ever. It was as though its weight had grown, pulling me down, forcing me to the earth. "The choice is yours," the voice said again. This time it wasn't a command. It wasn't an order. It was a question that hung in the air, waiting for an answer. The offering. Me. I had no choice. The weight of it, the finality of it, pressed down on me. The realization flooded me like cold water, filling me, consuming me. There was no escape, no other path. The bell had called, the earth had called, and I was the answer. I raised my hand to the bell, feeling its cold surface against my skin. And with that single motion, I understood. It was over, and I had already made my choice. The silence that followed felt more deafening than the tolling of the bell. My heart beat in time with the distant rumblings of the earth, but the weight of the silence seemed to choke me, suffocating every breath I tried to take. I felt as if I were drowning, sinking deeper into the abyss of this ritual, into the very core of something that transcended time and reality. The bell in my hand was a cold weight, its iron surface smooth yet somehow jagged in its grip. I had accepted the truth, however twisted, however monstrous it seemed. The offering was me. I was the answer to whatever ancient question had been asked. The earth had called, and I had answered. But what would that offering truly mean? What price would it demand? The creature, or whatever it was, stood towering above me. Its form had shifted, almost imperceptibly, becoming more solid, more real, like a shadow given substance. It loomed over the altar, its eyes glowing faintly, watching me with an intensity that made my skin crawl. Its voice echoed in my mind again, but this time, it was no longer just a whisper. It was a presence, as if the voice had become the very air, the very space around me. You have made your choice, Daniel. I flinched at the mention of my name. It should have been impossible. No one knew me here. No one knew who I was. Not really. Yet this thing, the creature, spoke my name as though it had always known me. The offering is complete. But you must remember, Daniel, all things are a sacrifice, and what you give will be taken in kind. The words resonated in my chest, the force of them sinking deep into my soul. A sacrifice. I hadn't thought of it that way, not at first, but now, as the creature's words echoed through me, I understood. I was not just giving of myself. I was being taken. Something of me, something vital would be claimed, something beyond my comprehension. The creature's eyes, those cold, glowing orbs, shifted, and for a moment I thought I saw something else behind them, a flicker of something ancient, something vast, like the reflection of an infinite sky filled with stars. But it was fleeting. In the next instant, the creature's gaze was fixed on me again, its hunger palpable. I could feel the earth beneath me, feel its pulse, its beating heart. It was as if the land itself was alive, aware, waiting for the final act. The air smelled of damp soil and old stone, but there was something else beneath that scent. A sweetness, sickly and thick, like decay, a perfume of death. Time is slipping away, the creature's voice echoed, its tone now urgent. The 13th night draws near. and the offering must be given before the bell tolls again. A chill ran down my spine. The 13th night. It had been a constant thread through everything. The letters, the dreams, the whispers. The 13th night was when it would all end, when the bell would toll for the last time, and the offering would be made in full. I was no longer sure whether the creature was speaking to me or to the land itself. Perhaps it didn't matter. Perhaps I was just another part of this twisted game, a pawn in a much larger design. But there was one thing I knew for certain. Whatever I had been expecting, whatever I'd imagined this moment to be, it was not enough to prepare me for what came next. I looked at the altar again. The runes, glowing faintly, pulsed with a rhythm that matched the beating of my heart. The altar had changed once more, its form shifting, bending as though it were alive. The stone that had once seemed so solid now seemed to breathe, to move, like the surface of water disturbed by a rippling wind. And from within the altar, I saw it. A shape. A figure. It was impossibly dark, impossible to focus on. A shadow that seemed to distort the very light around it. Its outline was familiar, but I couldn't place it. It felt like something I should have known. Something that had always been there, lurking just beyond my reach. It was the shape of a thing, ancient and vast, far beyond the understanding of any mortal mind. It wasn't a man. It wasn't a beast. It was something more, something ancient, something that had been waiting for a long time, waiting for me. The creature's voice pierced my thoughts once more, louder this time, as if it was no longer content with simply whispering in my mind. The offering must be made. Danielle. There was no mistaking the urgency in its voice now. No more calm assurances. Only a demand. A need. And in the silence that followed, I could hear the tolling of the bell again, its sound like the beating of a heart. Slow, deliberate, unrelenting. My hand gripped the bell tighter, instinctively, and with that motion I felt something stir inside me, a shift, a change, deep in my core. The weight of it, the suffocating pressure, grew stronger. And then, as if a switch had been flipped, it all clicked into place. I understood. The bell was not merely a signal, a call. It was a vessel for the sacrifice. It had been made to ring, to summon, to gather. And now, as the offering was set to be given, the bell was calling to the earth itself, to the creature, to the darkness beneath the altar. It had one final purpose to fulfill. My breath caught in my throat. The offering wasn't just me. It was my soul, my essence. My very being would be torn away, given to this thing, this entity that had been waiting for the bell to ring one last time. And I was the final piece, the final offering. No more words, Daniel, the voice of the creature growled, low and final. The 13th night has come. The bell rings and your offering is here. My hand trembled around the bell as I looked down at it, at the cold, twisted metal in my palm. The very air seemed to thicken, to constrict around me, suffocating every thought, every hope. There was no escape. There had never been any escape. The bell tolled once more, and I felt it. The earth shifted beneath me, and the world seemed to fracture, to crack open. The dark figure inside the altar stirred, rising, its form becoming clearer now, but still ungraspable, still shifting, still beyond comprehension. It was time. I closed my eyes and let go. The bell tolled again, and with it the offering was complete. The air around me thickened again, and a coldness crept into my bones, making it feel as if I had been submerged in ice. My hands were still trembling around the bell, though I could no longer feel its weight. It was as though it had become part of me, embedded deep within my chest. The bell had called the earth, had summoned the creature, and now it had fulfilled its purpose. But there was no satisfaction, no relief, only the deafening sound of its toll. I opened my eyes. The world around me had changed. The altar had cracked open, the runes on the stone flashing with an unnatural light. The once still air was now vibrating, alive with an energy I couldn't understand. The ground beneath my feet was no longer solid. It was shifting, rolling, as though it were some great living thing, stretching out into an endless void. And there, in the center of it all, the dark shape was fully revealed. It was enormous. Its form was twisted and shifting, a dark, ever-changing silhouette that seemed to swallow the light around it. At first, I thought it was made of smoke or shadows, but as I looked closer, I realized that it was something far worse. It was as if the very fabric of reality had torn open, and this thing had slithered through the rift, a creature born from the space between worlds. The sound of the bell tolling reverberated through the ground, through my very bones. It wasn't just a sound anymore. It was a presence. It was the embodiment of something vast and ancient, something older than time itself. I staggered back, my heart pounding as I tried to make sense of what was happening. But there was no sense. There was only this overwhelming force that filled every corner of the world, every inch of my being. It was like the earth itself was shaking under the weight of what was unfolding. The offering is complete. The voice of the creature spoke again. But it was different now. Deeper, more resonant. The words seemed to echo from every direction, from everywhere at once. The bell has tolled. The ritual is fulfilled. I couldn't speak. I couldn't breathe. I could only watch, my body frozen in place as the creature continued to shift, its form becoming more defined, more tangible. Its eyes, those hollow, glowing eyes, locked onto mine. And I felt a surge of recognition, not of the creature itself, but of something far more personal. It was as if it knew me, had always known me, as though it had been waiting for me to understand, waiting for me to remember. The toll of the bell grew louder, more frantic. The creature's form rippled and twisted, and I could see something within it, something old, something terrible. It was a glimpse of a world long forgotten, a memory of a time before time, a time when the world had been different, when the boundaries between life and death had been thin, when the earth had spoken to those who listened. "You are not alone, Daniel," the creature's voice boomed. "You are part of this." I wanted to scream, to run, to break free from this nightmare, but I couldn't. The words held me in place, tethered me to this moment, to this place. The tolling of the bell echoed louder, vibrating through me, through the very air itself. I felt something stirring inside me, a presence, a connection that I had never known existed. And then I understood. I wasn't just an offering. I wasn't just a sacrifice. I was the key to something far greater than I had ever imagined. The earth trembled again, and the creature, now fully formed, moved. It was a towering thing, its shape indescribable, its body a writhing mass of darkness and shifting shapes. It didn't move like anything I had ever seen before. It was as though its very presence bent the world around it, warping reality itself. It was alive in a way that defied understanding, a being that existed outside of time and space, beyond the limits of comprehension. It reached out with a long, gnarled hand, and in that moment, I felt it, a surge of energy, of power, coursing through me. I gasped, my body involuntarily jerking, and I realized, with a sickening certainty, that it wasn't just my body, it was touching. It was my soul. "You have come to us, Daniel," the creature said. "You have been called to awaken what was buried long ago. The ritual is complete. but the toll must be paid. The earth groaned beneath me, the very ground shaking as if it were waking up from a long, deep sleep. The darkness seemed to thicken, swirling around me, consuming the air, the light, until I could see nothing but the creature's glowing eyes and the ripples of its dark form. The bell tolled again, and this time it felt like a death knell. The creature extended its hand toward me, and I felt an overwhelming force pulling me in. My body felt light, weightless, as though I were being drawn into the very core of the earth itself. I could no longer fight it. I was no longer capable of resisting. The toll will be paid, the creature's voice whispered in my mind, its words cold and final. I closed my eyes, feeling the darkness swallow me whole. The last thing I heard was the tolling of the bell, and then everything went silent. The silence stretched on, longer than I could comprehend. It was as if the world had stopped, as if time itself had frozen in that moment. I couldn't move, I couldn't speak. I was trapped, suspended in a place beyond existence. And then a voice that was not the creature's, a voice that was mine. What have I done? I tried to scream, but my voice was swallowed by the silence. What have I become? The earth around me shifted again, and I felt myself falling through the void, through time, through space. I tried to reach out, but my hands passed through nothing. There was nothing to hold on to, just the endless, hollow toll of the bell, and the knowledge that it would never stop ringing. Not now. Not ever. Thank you for listening to The Night Reader. If this story resonated with you, if you've ever felt lost in the dark, remember, you're not alone. The stories we carry are what connect us. If you haven't already, subscribe to the channel, like the video, and leave a comment letting me know, where are you listening from, and what story do you carry? Until next time, keep your light close and your shadows closer.